All right, so here's the thing. If you go to a massive international security conference in Europe, I reckon there is a decent chance you're going to be asked to weigh in on a few issues about global security. Now, you can go there for a stunt. You can go there to make fun of Marco Rubio and Donald Trump. By all means, don't tell me to get in the way of that. But maybe on the 8-hour flight from the US to Munich, you might want to brush up on a few things that are going on around the world, because otherwise something like this might happen to you.
You know, I think that this is such a, I think that this is of course a very longstanding policy of the United States. And I think what we are hoping for is that we want to make sure that we never get to that point.
That was far-left Democrat Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez attempting to answer one of the most widely asked questions of foreign policy about whether the US would commit troops to Taiwan if it were invaded. Now, AOC is often thrown around, including by me, as someone the Democrat Party might look to as future president. You know, someone they could put on their ticket in the not-too-distant future. She's got that appeal to young voters, she knows how to work the media, and she's loud. But to become a serious presidential candidate, you need more than a few stunts. You actually need to know what's going on in the world and have gravity around you that when you speak, other countries are going to listen. So that's game plan here, right? Future world, AOC is president. China tells her they're about to invade Taiwan. They ask her point blank what she's going to do about it. Let's see what she says.
You know, I think that this is such a, I think that this is of course a very longstanding policy of the United States. And I think what we are hoping for is that we want to make sure that we never get to that point.
Honestly, play that at my funeral. It's as if AOC watched the fall of Kamala Harris and decided what America hated about her was that she was too articulate. She was on that panel with another one-day Democrat presidential hopeful, Gretchen Whitmer. And as Megyn Kelly pointed out on her show, she didn't fare that much better. And it kind of reminded everyone of another famous global thought leader.
What do we look like?
I personally believe
I do think that.
And the Iraq, everywhere, like such as
Ukraine's independence, keeping their landmass.
Because some people out there in our nation don't have mass.
I think that this is such a, I think that
Everywhere, like such as
this is
and the Iraq.
This is, of course,
Now, if that were the only way in which AOC let herself down at the conference, it could be something easily shaken off. You know, one bad clip doesn't make a bad conference. But wait, there's more.
Rubio's speech was a pure appeal to Western culture. My favorite part was when he said that American cowboys came from Spain.
I thought they came from Winnetou, but
I believe the Mexicans and descendants of African enslaved peoples would like to have a word.
Horses were introduced to the Americas by Spanish conquistadors 500 years ago, so it's pretty tough to be a cowboy without a horse, but maybe I'm missing something. Unfortunately, let's keep it going.
What happened in Venezuela, for example, it is not a it is not a remark on who Maduro was as a leader. He canceled elections. He was an anti-democratic leader. That doesn't mean that we can kidnap a head of state and engage in acts of war just because the nation is below the equator.
Venezuela is, of course, above the equator. Now, usually I don't go for these pop quiz gotcha moments. You know, I think they're all a bit low rent. But the difference with this one is that AOC has completely brought it upon herself. I mean, she literally traveled to a foreign policy conference for the sole purpose of dunking on the foreign policy positions and decisions of her political enemies and trying to show off her own foreign policy shops. So if you're going into the lion's den, you might want to come armed with something more than a chew toy. It's as if she assumed that everyone at the conference would be so impressed with her prepared criticism that there would be absolutely no follow-up questions or interrogation about anything other than her talking points. She was there for the social media clip, never thinking people might want to hear a little more from her. So now she's exposed as a minnow when it comes to the big presidential defining issues. It was completely humiliating for her and provided kind of clips that sink presidential campaigns years before they even begin. So of course, she went into damage control. New York Times reporter Kellen Browning moaned, but rather than the substance of her arguments, it was her on-camera stumbles when answering questions about specific world affairs that rocketed around conservative social media, drove plenty of the discussion about her visit, as political observers speculated whether they would make a dent in potential presidential run in 2026. Well, sorry. But you don't get to have the substance of your arguments covered if you can't answer extremely simple questions, because nor is a question over whether or not you would send troops to defend a democratic ally against a communist dictatorship a specific world affair, but the absolute base question anyone should have an immediate answer ready for if they want to be taken seriously. Ocasio-Cortez traveled to Germany to get some viral social media clips, and she got them. Tough to feel sorry for her.